right, everyone. Welcome to January's installment of the Special Education Cohort. This month, we are talking about working with paraprofessionals. All right. So first thing we're going to do is go over the roles and responsibilities of paraprofessionals and you as case managers. So to start, we will look at paraprofessional roles. There are several things that paras do, but there are also several things they do not do in their job description. Typically, this can be found in your district handbook if there is one specifically for paraprofessionals, but some of the things that it outlines includes the fact that they will communicate with team members and accept assigned tasks. So that would be from you, possibly from gen ed teacher when it applies. Next, they will model appropriate academic and social behaviors through respect and communication. This would be outlined again in any of the policies that you have at school, but it's likely also your expectation that they would be doing that while they were with students in the general education setting as well. Next, they will understand student disabilities and foster independence. To allow them to do this, we give them access sometimes to Brown files if it's applicable, also making sure that they understand all of the supports for positive behavior, things that go along with the disability, and how to reach goals. And last, they follow the teacher's guidance for data collection and behavior plans. That's going to vary from case manager to case manager, but making sure that paras are completely aware of what your expectation is for that is really important, especially when it comes to progress reporting time. A few things that paraprofessionals will not do in their role is communicate or complete assignments for students. That goes for students who are receiving special education services and also ones who they just may come in contact with in general education classes. Paraprofessionals will not write IEPs, evaluations, or communicate with parents. Writing IEPs and doing evaluations is very obvious that you would need to be a case manager or another itinerant staff to do that. However, there still are questions about communicating with parents. We always advise that communication goes through a case manager, and we especially wouldn't want a para to feel like they needed to communicate with a parent regarding school things, whether that's in the community and they're asked about it or in the school. So making sure that paras really understand, even if they're friends with the family of the student, that we don't want them communicating about things that are happening in a school.
Remind
They
them and
will
direct
not
them.
be permitted to use their phone or handle personal matters during work time. This can be up to your discretion, of course, depending what is going on in individual lives and scenarios. But generally, focusing on the job is what we want them to be doing. And last, we don't leave them alone to introduce or teach new information to students. They are not the teacher. They certainly do help with groups and can assist when new information is not being taught, but it's important that they're not introducing new concepts.
All right, so preparing is the key to success. Before the school year starts, it's really important to making sure like you're scheduling your paraprofessionals appropriately and really utilizing their time within their day as much as possible. I know, especially in the districts I'm in, and I'm sure everywhere, we're definitely short paras. So really utilizing every minute of their day is really important. Obviously being aware of their breaks and lunches and things like that, but making sure you're providing that daily schedule to all the paraprofessionals and really considering their strengths when matching them with a student. So just really trying to get to know them and what strengths and weaknesses they have. Like maybe there's somebody who's like excels and does really well working on academic tasks with students, but then maybe behavioral needs aren't their forte. So really matching them with students that are most appropriate. As far as student needs, making sure that you're reviewing behavior plans, accommodations, and modifications with the student, because yes, as teachers, we write the IEPs and we write and come up with all of those accommodations, modifications, and we create those behavioral plans. But typically on a day-to-day basis, the paraprofessionals are the ones that are carrying those out. And so they need to be able to look at them and review them and be very familiar with each student's behavior plans and modifications for the classroom. And really just having that open door policy for questions regarding student needs. I know when I was a teacher, I made sure, like, regardless of what the issue was, making sure that parents felt comfortable in coming to you to talk about issues that come up, concerns, programming. You know, they're seeing that day to day, the ins and outs of the programming for the students, and sometimes it's just really helpful for them to share, like, hey, we are being really diligent in doing X, Y, and Z, but really it's just not working the way I think you're envisioning it should. Can we tweak it? Can we do something different, or try this or try that? So just really wanting to make sure that you have that open door policy and wanting that reciprocal communication with your paras. And then expectations, making sure the paraprofessionals know what the expectations are. Kind of what Marissa was talking about earlier, those roles and responsibilities, making sure they know what you expect when they're in the special education room versus in the general ed classroom versus in the lunchroom or in the gym for specials, things like that. Making sure they know what the phone and computer use policies are, how to really work if they're working with multiple students, how do they assist them, and what is your expectation for them and on intervening in behaviors, and how you want that to look depending on what environment they're in. On the bottom there is a link for a color quiz. And so in order to understand and embrace your personalities and those of your team members, this can jumpstart your journey to a successful year with minimal adult issues. So each member of your team can go ahead and do that color quiz. And Marissa, I know you've done that before, so if you want to share a little bit more insight on the color quiz, feel free.
Yeah, for sure. So really, it's a tool. It's nothing that you couldn't find online. I mean, it's really communication, and it breaks you down into 4 colors. If you attended our summer training, Lauren and I did a really expanded version of it, and understanding how you communicate, how others perceive your communication. And a lot of people were surprised to see what they were. There was a lot of great feedback and feeling like if teams could do something like this and understand each other, that it would eliminate a lot of the things that paras and case managers had gone through in the past. So it's just a consideration and a tool if you wanted to try something like that. So next is the shared mission. We have our individual roles, but also we know that everyone is here for students. So first of all, it is really important that we are listeners. As teachers, we have to recognize that our paras are out there as our eyes and ears when we can't be with the students. And paras need to recognize that the IEP is a legal document, and feedback about it isn't a personal thing or a knock on something they're doing. It's simply about doing what's best for the student. And next is to communicate. Teachers, it's really important to articulate clear plans that are delivered respectfully. We know that at a moment's notice, everything could change in a schedule and what we're planning for the day. So making sure that we are communicating that clearly, but also in a respectful and calm way to make sure our adult team doesn't also become dysregulated from the changes. Paras, if there are questions or concerns, don't make assumptions and always come back to the case manager. That's an expectation that you would set out as a case manager, and it goes back to that open door policy that Carrie was talking about. And last is flexibility. Like we had said, when teachers are organized and prepared, it is much easier to be flexible, realizing that so much can change. The more prepared we are, the easier our kids and our paras can transition into doing whatever task needs to be done next. Paras, it is their responsibility to be flexible with student needs, the student schedule, because gen ed changes schedules too from time to time, and realizing that they need to be prepared to pivot and accept the new direction if it does come their way.
All right, so just looking at leadership and starting out strong. So I think it is definitely critical that you start the year with having really high expectations that are clearly articulated to your team, kind of like as a teacher, you know, at the beginning of the year, it's like you feel like kids might hate you in October, but love you in January because they've learned your expectations and your rules and know exactly kind of limit setting and what, you know, what you're expecting for them to do and how to perform with the students in your program. And so really just being holding really high expectations is okay. These you can meet with your team before the school year starts and set those expectations and really model those expectations as well. And so here's another acronym for you to use: clear expectations. So C would be to communicate the same message to all staff regarding your expectations. So again, meeting as a team, even meetings periodically throughout the year to review those expectations, I think is really important too, because as the year goes on, sometimes we get kind of in our day-to-day routine, things get crazy, expectations and kind of procedures kind of fall to the wayside sometimes. L, lead your team to be as productive as possible during work hours. We mentioned this earlier too, when you're looking at that schedule, you know, it's really easy to, you know, give those extra 5-10 minute kind of breathers throughout the day, but realistically, it's really important. The districts are counting on you to schedule them really efficiently and for their whole day, because again, we're always short-staffed, and so making sure you're utilizing the people you do have to the extent possible is really important. E, encourages staff to be their best through boundaries, knowledge, and trust. That one's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Just really, Marissa touched on like those boundaries, especially with parents, and you know, we pretty much all work in pretty small towns, and I think it's really easy to run into parents and other family members or friends of the students you work with in the grocery store or gas station, wherever, and just making sure you've staff know that there are boundaries, there's data privacy, all those types of things. If they have questions about programming, make sure they know, like, nope, don't take any of those questions on, just send them to me or whatever you may have. A, for acknowledge the importance of every person on the team and the role that they play for our student. When I was a case manager, I typically had about 7 paraprofessionals at least working with me. And I think it's really important for them to know that, man, on a day-to-day basis, if I wouldn't have had those ladies, I never would have survived. And I think like it's okay to show that appreciation and acknowledge how truly important they are to the process, because I think sometimes they get the, well, I'm just a para mentality, but really it's no, they're your life link. At least for me, I could not have done my job without them. And just making sure you're acknowledging, you know, the work that they do, because they sometimes have the not so fun tasks to do during the day. We get the paperwork, but sometimes the things that they have to do, I'd rather do the paperwork. R, reduces claims of favoritism or unfairness among staff when everyone hears the same message. So again, just treating everyone equally and making sure that you're working together as a team.
And remaining consistent with that.
So just clarifying on setting an example, it is 100% on you as a case manager to model the expectations that you are setting out for your paraprofessionals to also strive for. So articulate those just as Carrie had explained, but also hold yourself to those expectations and show that they are worth following because they lead to successful teaming. Next, with communication, we mentioned always doing it with respect is very important to help people feel like they can come to you when something is going wrong or when something is going awesome and they just want to let you know that. Consider what type of communication method you will have in place for your your paras. Sometimes it works out during the day that they can just come to you and talk about things on the fly. We've seen Google Forms, notebooks, other means that are used when the schedule is so tight that there's not time to talk about student concerns. And then make sure if you choose something like that, your paras are aware of it. Check it often so that things don't get lost, in the communication. And then last, while you're upholding boundaries, it really is important to note in the para handbook, if your school has one, because that's what they're upheld to first and foremost. So they may ask questions, you may have questions about what their responsibilities are and are not, or what you do in certain situations. That would be found in their handbook. Also, I know when I was a case manager and a couple other people at the school had created their own little insert to the para handbook, and that explains specifically what you wanted in your classroom and what worked for your grade levels. It wasn't anything that strayed from what their actual responsibilities are in their handbook, but it defined them based on your program. It might look very different to have something like that in an ASD program versus an EBD program or SLD program. It's also really helpful when you have subs to use something like that so that they really have all the information that is necessary to do the job well and right. You're muted, Care.
Sorry, and then I had it zoomed so I could see it better, and my bad. So conflict resolution, I think we all would hope to not ever have to resolve any conflicts amongst your group of staff that you're working with, but I think it's pretty inevitable that when you're working that closely, there's going to be some conflict resolution to deal with. So first, you would want to start by investigating, understand that all available information regarding the conflict, and really making sure you play an unbiased role. I'm trying to be more of that investigator of trying to come up with what really happened, getting all sides of the story, making sure you're following up with the paras to discuss that solution that you might come up with, and then when to meet again, really finding that resolution. So offering guiding steps for the pair to take or offer to help mediate when applicable. But just make sure, like, using your better judgment on when should you have an administrator step in, because there is going to be that time where it's kind of above you. You're not really paid, or that's not your role or responsibility to deal with some of that. And so making sure to get that administrator involved if needed. But just using your common sense too with working with other adults and trying to, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So going back to that color quiz, I think you can use that as like a valuable tool also when looking at conflict resolution and really working on like, okay, well, this staff person really is more introvert, kind of does their own thing, doesn't really like to be a part of the group, but this person wants everybody to be involved and do group activities and things like that, and just really making sure we're sensitive to everyone's personalities and needs and wants and all that type of stuff.
So next is review and discuss performance. I think most of our member districts use a similar form or are coming into using this form in order to review the work our paras are doing in several domains and how they can then get better over time if there are goals. So the first thing that's done with that is review. So participate in performance reviews in order to point out areas of improvement and strength. Include the perspectives of general ed staff, because they are mostly the ones who are around some of our paras. So it's really important if you perceive there is to be a problem or if something is going very well, that you would get the input of the general ed staff because they likely even see it more than you do. Next is to discuss. In some places, they do a discussion between case manager and para one-to-one. Administrators often like to join that depending on who it is. Maybe it's just standard that it would be the three of you, but making sure you discuss each of the points together to uphold that open communication. It can be really hard to have some of those discussions. It's not likely that we would give someone 5 stars across the board on everything, because that would mean there's no room for improvement, and that's just not realistic for really anyone. So understanding that this is high points, it's points for a little bit of improvement, but that's a good thing to have as a leader, so that your paras know there's always more awesome things and somewhere to go. And then last is goal setting. Set reasonable goals based on areas of improvement. Talk about the steps with the paraprofessional or the team to make performance go to the next level. You may have your entire group struggling to keep busy during resource times. Maybe they're struggling then with being on their phone too much. They're becoming a bit complacent. Setting a goal for the group or reviewing in this way brings it back to a concrete skill that you're trying to improve. And there's not as much room for people to become offended, because it's not just an opinion that you're saying, or they're not feeling attacked or taunted by it.
All right, fighting the downtime. Again, we talked about this a little bit earlier when it comes to scheduling and really making sure you're planning accordingly for your paras and working with creating a schedule that utilizes all of their time throughout the day. Making sure if you do find chunks of time in your schedule where you maybe don't have a need for support at that time, you can collaborate with other special ed teachers in case they're short or in need of additional paraprofessionals for the day. Just making sure like kid time or like contact time with kids comes definitely before any resource time or additional tasks that you would enjoy having that paraprofessional do. I think there's always tasks that we can find for them to do, but really wanting to make sure we're utilizing our student time first. If there are days where, we all have those days before Christmas break, or there's reward times or different times throughout the year that paras maybe aren't needed in the classroom or different things come up. Just having a standard list of tasks that are needed to be completed in the classroom. Maybe it's data collection from point sheets or other grading or organizing, things like that, or creating visuals for in the resource room or out in the classroom. Those things are definitely a great task for them to have to fill any downtime or free time they have. And then also on the opposite end of things, like really considering paraprofessionals who already have multiple students in one class. Is there a need to have an additional person assisting them in the classroom? And just trying to, I think the key concept here is to just really collaborate with those other special ed teachers in your building too, to make sure like you're all covering all of the needs of kids, regardless of what program that paraprofessional is assigned to.
And then wrapping up, we did touch on providing praise, and Carrie really said it. Paraprofessionals are so absolutely important to our programs. It does not hurt to give them recognition for that. So really just a few tips on doing that. It can be something very simple. It doesn't have to be Paraprofessional Recognition Week. It can be a simple text, email, leave a note in their mailbox, just expressing your thanks for what they're doing, or if something has gone really well. Consider your timing when you go ahead and do that. A good time to offer positive feedback could be after a difficult or unusual day, trying something new to the parent, student, or even when there's a student achievement that really needs to be celebrated. And then last, you can always find something good even when things seem really, really bad. Positive praise can be used when you are struggling with an individual para. I would consider reminding them of what their strengths are or what those high points are, because it helps them to receive the corrective feedback or plan going forward how things need to go better. It brings them back to realizing they have strengths in this job. This is why we're asking them to do whatever the tasks are. And really, it helps to reestablish what may be perceived as something negative happening between you and the para, and move it forward in a positive direction and back to kid focused time and work. Because in the end, when things get muddy, usually what's happened is the adults have forgotten that we're here for the kids and we just got caught in the adult issues, which we want to eliminate as much as possible. Well, does anybody have any questions? Well, as always, these will be available online on the Rum River website. You can collect CEUs for this, so make sure you do that. Or if you have a friend who watches it later, remind them to do that. But let us know if you have any questions on this or anything else. We're always interested in knowing your thoughts and helping you going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.